your pictures from Russia, which look quite good, the worship and stuff. So excellent.
Yeah, it's glad to be home.
Good. Right. Okay. Well, is there anything you want to talk about or share? I mean, since the last time two of you guys, we sort of did some exercises, and I was just talking to David about that, and he sort of followed on with that. How have you got on with that, Mike?
I have, I guess, for lack of a better term, attempted to have the Lord show me the gates, and it's like I don't know if it's a lack of understanding, but I have waited and haven't had any leading in that way. To just be totally honest, I mean, I can think of the Lord. I can visualize His love for me, and by faith, communicate through my heart and through words and through music and song. That I'm in His presence and stuff. But the gate stuff have been like a blockage for me. I don't know why, and so I've always been pretty open and I've got a strong ability a lot of times to see things in the spirit, but this is one area that and if it's not there, it's not there. So maybe you can give me some pointers, or maybe I don't know. Maybe I need to look at. I was listening to Justin Abraham yesterday, and he was sharing how when he first started hearing Ian, it made no sense with the courts and all that stuff. But when he heard about Eden and the Lord's pleasure, it clicked with him, and it was like his doorway. Now he moves in these other areas, but it's like it wasn't. The other stuff wasn't registering. So, and God's made us all different. So I know that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Some of it is the developing the intimacy, and we can do that. I think when we did it a couple of times ago, we talked about opening that first love gate. Well, in a sense, that's the starting point of engagement with the presence of God on the inside of us, opening the door, letting Him come in fellowship. How that then goes on, the key is we just want it to flow all the way through us, around us, into developing the atmosphere of the Spirit around us, which to a degree I imagine you're already doing, and there's a sense where you're probably sensitive to the realms of the Spirit around you. So part of it is you may be trying to do something that you've already sort of engaged in, and that might be some of the difficulty there. Whereas, for me, it was like, I'd never really thought about it in those terms before, so it was all new, and so I experienced heaven before I realized that I can engage God in the garden of my own heart, or see this flow of the Spirit that would understand who I am, my spirit, soul, body, senses, and those things. So, I sort of did it back to front, and then tried to engage and sort of then see, okay, I've engaged here, but a lot of what God wanted me to do was to develop and tend my own soul and the development of my own spirit, so that relationship would then lead me into the things that went on in heaven from a position of intimacy and a flow of life and fellowship with Him in that way. So, I basically, would encourage you just to do the same thing. It's like, if I know Ian, when Ian first was looking to engage these ways, he looked for something physical that then gave him a spiritual in, if you like. So he would go and stand in a doorway or a gateway and step in and out of it and see what it felt like. I certainly didn't have to do any of that. I just sort of chose to ask Jesus to take me by the hand and lead me to the gates and then teach me about them. So I would open them by saying, I open this gate and make you Lord of this gateway, and I would just stand there in in my spirit, if you like, and look for him to help me understand how they functioned according to who I am. You know, and all the gateways are open for me. I don't open them generally anymore. I do a checkup now and again, make sure that there's nothing hindering them. But the first love gate is where I engage with every day, and I yoke myself to Jesus there and become joined to him and look to become one spirit and look to flow with him. So I would just encourage you to just continue just to think of a gate and ask Jesus to give you the revelation that comes to you, whether it comes through words or impressions or feelings, or whether actually you just say to him, look, okay, what are the gates that are already functioning and already flowing, and let's start with those, because I can flow through them already. You may function really well in revelation or intuition or in worship, and so those things are probably already flowing. You know, you may not function so much in one of the others. I think it is a relationship, and therefore talk to him about it. You know, ask him, you know, do a live bust on yourself, if you like, and ask him to show you if there's a blockage. You know, what is the blockage? Is it a mindset thing? Is it just a protocol thing? You know, the enemy obviously doesn't want you to be flowing fully. You know, last time we obviously sort of bypassed that part and went straight back into heaven and engaged in heaven in the river of life and things there. But obviously you want that flowing from heaven through our lives, and you want the river of life flowing so it becomes rivers of living water that flow around us. So some of it is just how that works for you, and we are all different, and I think it's okay, Jesus, how does this work for me? And I think that's the place to start and see what he says, because you obviously can hear him, so ask him something specific about it and see what he says to you about how that works for you. That would be my encouragement. Yeah. All right. So is anything else? How about you, Mike? Have you got anything you want to share, talk about?
Well, I just want to say how much I appreciate your ability to break down certain things that have appeared to be very mysterious, out of reach, so to speak, but have brought them to a very you know, just a real encounter. You made me, in fact, I kind of bear witness with what Mike is saying. I think in some ways we've made it too complicated, because when I first listened to you, for a while I was like, oh, I've experienced that, or oh, I've experienced that. And what I realized was I was actually engaging in many different things, but wasn't taking it to the next levels. And so one of the things that you've helped me in is you've showed me the different levels that you can, in other words, I was kind of using my engagement as a means to just function in ministry. Like I would, you know, experience something and then okay, yeah, this works, you know, and then use that as a means to do the ministry, you know, that I'm in or whatever. I mean, I'm very intimate, very relational, but you challenged me to, wait a minute, you don't stop there. That's just, that's an opening to the next thing and the next thing. And so for myself, I don't even know how to really say it. I was engaging in many different things, but didn't stop to examine them and really, you know, go, oh wow, this is like the mountain, for example. You know, I've experienced the mountain of the Lord, you know, mountain of worship and all that for years, and have actually made decrees from that mountain. But it was always just looked at it as my own personal experience, and you know, but never really looked at it in the broad sense that other people could engage with their mountain, and there were other mountains, you know. So when I first heard you, I was like, oh my gosh, you know, this is great. And so I've I've been telling my people, I've been encouraging them, to move in these realms. We kind of have that foundation where anything goes, so to speak, so they're always leaning into that. But anyhow, yeah, so that's kind of my little 2 bits of what, and I'm still, I'm still exploring. I mean, the gates, I'm thinking too, and you said this a while back, like you might go in a certain way, it might appear to you a certain way, and then what I was able to do is realize that how the Lord was communicating to me, showing me certain things, it might have not looked exactly like you were describing, but I realized, oh, that is this. And so I was able to equate that like that, and without feeling like it had to be exactly that way. I was like, oh yeah, oh, this is that, and this is that, and so I would just start exploring, how he was relating to me more, and then other things would open up. Yeah. But I still feel that the most part, even though I've been functioning in different things for years, in many ways, I'm just at the beginning, because there's so much more, and I've always known there's so much more, but I guess just again not really pursuing it, to the next level. So I've really, in fact, now that I've come into this more and more, like I want to travel less. I just want to spend my time, it's just, I'm like, leave me alone, just let me do this. And so anyhow, it's been quite enjoyable.
Good, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think that heaven is a multiverse. The whole dimensions of the realm of the kingdom and the spirit are very multiversed in their way, in that we engage with them in a personal way. God has created us individually, and our engagement is individual. And so I think a lot of the things, I try not to be too descriptive about things specifically for that purpose, because people have to find their own level of engagement. Yes, there are some things that are described in the Word, the throne of God and different things, which are like that, but even when we engage in them, the aspect of that which will impact us at any one particular time will be specific, and God knows exactly how to communicate with us, and the symbolism of the things that we see and the colors and the different things are very much to be tuned into, so that we realize, hey, God is speaking that way. I think many people have had many sorts of encounters. There seems to be and not a lot which is put it all together and actually put it into, hey, this is how this all functions together. And I think that's what happened to me. I had so many experiences, I just didn't know where they were, or they were very real and they were very powerful, but where was this? What was this for? Is this a one-off? Is this something that I'm supposed to go back to? And as I began to ask those questions, and when I meditated back on the experience, I think that's the key, is we have an encounter, don't let it stay there. Meditate on it, go back into it, journal it, then go back there, think about it, allow the Spirit of God to bring revelation of it. Each experience then becomes a doorway to greater experience. And that, for me, that helped, because I then began to go back with specific questions. Where is this? How does this work in relation to that? I mean, some of that's because of my teaching sort of redemptive gift. I think that way. I want to know how things work. I want to know where they fit, and I want to see the pattern of it and the map of it, so I can help other people get there, sort of thing. So I began to do that. When I first met Ian, and he came and did a conference here, and he stayed with me, and we had such a whale of a time, because we were just sharing these stories and encounters, and it was like, oh, that's there. Oh yeah, that's there. And I would say to him, oh, I experienced this. Oh yeah, that's this. And just sharing some things, we began to, for me, it began to piece together some of the where this is and how does this function, and I've continued to pursue that. looking for what are the pathways here. You know, it talks about ancient paths, and it talks about ways, you know, the highway of holiness and different things. It's all about a path, a way of engagement that, you know, I've really pressed in to find out what it is. You know, where is this and what is its function? You know, because I mean, I've had visions in the past, you know, over many years. You know, back in '93, you know, I had a vision of this mountain, and I was walking up this mountain, and I was stopping at various places, and God was telling me things. The trouble is, I couldn't remember what He said afterwards. I just remember the encounter, and He's taken me back to it, and He showed me now some of the places that I visited and some of the things that I've seen were part of that original vision I had many years ago. But because I had no reference point, any grid for it, I just couldn't contain it. So I had the experience, but I couldn't contain the memory of it. Simply, it was just too much for me at that point in time. But it was a forerunner experience, I guess. And so, yeah, since over the last 3 years, really, I've really looked to understand and then find out how things function. Because if I'm going to go to a court, okay, I can go and see how that court functions, but I need to know what's the protocol of that court. You know, what's the difference between the court of angels and the court of war? You know, how does the court of chancellors work? You know, how do they all function? And I've sought wisdom, really, wisdom as a person, from, you know, the Proverbs 8 place. That has been very helpful for me in my experiences, because I've gone to wisdom and I've asked her to help me, and she sometimes has just engaged with me and took me to places and then showed me the protocol, because the desire of my heart is to know, you know. So the desire of my heart is to be able to understand it and to function in it, and then help other people to function in it. So, you know, I've encountered lots of people now, and many people have had these sort of experiences. They just don't really know how it all fits together and what they're supposed to do with it, and then, okay, how does this fit with my destiny and what I'm called to do, and how do I minister heaven on earth? You know, and so many people are doing ministry on earth, and that's great, and they're involved in ministry and are good stewards of that ministry. They've just never taken it to the next level of being friends with God. And, you know, I was like that for many years. You know, I functioned really well in ministry, but I wasn't a friend of God. You know, and now I feel I've found a friendship with Him, a relationship with Him, which has totally put the ministry into a whole different perspective and understanding. And then see, okay, and what can we do if we engage in heaven to bring that rulership, authority, power, influence through our ministry here, so that it operates in a different sphere and a different level. So, yeah, I can relate to what you're saying there, and I'm on the journey and still looking to understand. And, you know, I mean, I still get places that, you know, I've never been before. You know, on Sunday morning I was in this place of worship having a wonderful time, and I get hoiked off to this place, and I thought, well, where am I? And it was such an amazing, I mean, I've never experienced a place like it, and it was like, to start with, it was so dazzling and brilliant in the light that was there, and that it's almost like it was full of mirrors that were reflecting light and color and gold and stuff, and I couldn't see, and so I was like, well, where am I? And then I sort of started to try and focus, and I saw this whole council, you know, and so in the end I was like, well, where am I? You know, and it was this sort of galactic council thing. And I know that the Galactic Council meet in February, and they meet for a period of time, and they set things for the nations in different things. So I'm like, whoa, this is really, and I was so much like, whoa, and I was completely blown away by it. And I sort of did enough observation to see some things going on there. But I think, okay, I get those things because God wants me to map that out and to find out, okay, am I called to be there? I don't know. I got a call to go there last year and I couldn't go for various reasons. And I thought, okay, I'm not really sure. But it was really a really interesting encounter, which now I will now go back to, take it back to God, go to wisdom, ask what it was about, what was God wanting to reveal to me, was there anything specific I needed to do with that, did I just need to understand it, and I'll go back and ask all those sorts of questions, you know, and that's how I sort of function. Other people function and or, you know, I've tried to mix the relational connection with God in intimacy with sort of talking to him and him talking to me, because that's seemingly, when I first went into heaven, Jesus basically told me stuff like, what do you want to know? So it seemed that it was okay for me to be inquiring and want to know things, because that's how we seem to function. But it's an ongoing journey of discovery, without a doubt. And, you know, I'm just scratching the surface of it, I think. And there may be people who are called to actually engage in some of those things, and actually that is their whole function. They get hold of something and they really minister it, and it's part of their destiny to bring a transformation in a particular area or whatever. Right now, I feel that I'm called to go and find out stuff, and so I spend much more time exploring and discovering things than I do necessarily outworking things. You know, in the past, I've done a lot of signs and wonders, miracles, that type of prophetic stuff and healing stuff. But right now, it's not that season. I don't feel I'm in that season, and I don't miss it, to be honest, because I feel, hey, I'm in a place where I feel really comfortable, and I feel really at home in pursuing things. Now, ultimately, I know that we have to do the ministry on earth as it is in heaven, but, you know, I spend more time at the minute finding out about it and beginning to function there, that I think in the future will multiply the effect of what we need to do here. But it's certainly fun.
Yeah, you know, I think too, one of the simplicities of it is, you know, it's like if you're going to flow, if you're going to respond to like a word of knowledge, you really don't know for sure the full content of what is actually happening or what is going to be said until you just step into it by faith. And then when you do, just a whole new door opens up.
Yeah.
And so I find that that whole faith engagement in anything, like, you know, when you were mentioning about just certain aspects of heaven, I would be like, oh man, I think like I got a glimpse of that, you know. So what I would do is just by faith, I would just, oh, I'm going to go do that. And again, I think part of it was because I knew the Lord was always drawing me into that, but I don't even allow myself to get like agitated or feel like I'm missing out or whatever else is going on, because I just totally relax in my relationship in the Spirit, and that is my ultimate goal. So everything else is an addition to that. And so I find more that I'm able to relax and just settle into that than everything else. Just, you know, not that I don't want to pursue other things now, but it becomes more of a byproduct. When I was in Russia, this is another thing I've enjoyed what you've been sharing. When I was in Russia, as I was just prophetically speaking to the people, all of a sudden I was on the mountain. I wasn't even thinking about being on a mountain, but it was like just an unconscious thing that there I was in that realm and knew that I was in that realm and releasing things from that mountain and just watching that atmosphere appear in the place. And so, you know, I was loving it. I was like, yeah, this is great. So I think I've, again, had always encountered that, but now it's gone to the next level of reality as far as, you know, not just, you know, feeling it or perceiving it in my heart, my spirit, but then all of a sudden, oh wow, this is a real place. And so acquainting myself with that more and more, and you know, at whatever level that it unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think ultimately living in dual realms is being connected all the time to that realm. and that realm
Yes.
flowing through us as a gateway of heaven. You know, we are the house of God, in that God dwells in us, and that's an awesome place of intimacy, but we're also the gate of heaven that heaven wants to manifest through us. And so living connected, I think, is the ultimate goal, and being there and here all the time, and being sensitive to being there and here all the time, and being able to function in it. And I think that once we are really established in that, we will begin to see greater things, you know, than Jesus did, as he said, greater works, you know, because we will be doing the things that are flowing out of that and flowing through it. So, you know, everything must flow out of relationship.
Yeah.
You know, if it doesn't flow out of relationship, then we must be doing it for the wrong reason, because everything is based in intimacy. You know, Adam and Eve were called to walk with God in the cool of the day, in the garden, in their place of dominion, if you like, but it was all out of relationship, and we have to develop that relationship. And I think a lot of people are engaging some of the experiences but don't have the foundation of the relationship that enables the maturity to flow out. And I think God is calling people into that place of intimacy to actually to test people's hearts. You know, are you in this for me, or are you in this for you? And there's a mixture, and I think along the way we begin to get the purity of heart, and God is in that place of intimacy. Then we can trust him more to allow him to touch us and heal us and restore us and make us whole, and we don't have to hide things from him. You know, I think the saddest thing was, you know, not that Adam and Eve actually sinned, but they went and hid in the bushes. That was the saddest thing of that story, because if they didn't hide in the bushes and they went and ran to God, he would have forgiven them and made them whole. But they covered up and tried to do it out of their own understanding and humanistic ways that came in, which is so sad. And you know, he's drawing us into that place where we can fellowship with him in total openness, without fear, reverence but without fear, and I think that will draw us into even greater places of intimacy, and then greater places of authority. You know, is the priestly comes before the kingly, if you like, and we need those intimate places to enable us to rule with righteousness and justice, and it flows. So yeah, it's a great journey to be on, that flows from a place of fellowship with him. You know, and you know, I'm trying to sort of encourage people to see that both those pathways of relationship and responsibility, and they flow from there, and flow to create who we really are. You know, sons of God. You know, so those we can truly be manifested as in fullness, joint heirs and co-heirs with Christ. You know, at the moment we're just sort of learning, dipping our toe in really the water, but there's so much more to come. And I think the greatest thing, I think, is that, you know, God is speeding all this stuff up and accelerating it, which means that, you know, what did take a long time in the past is actually being accelerated for those who are willing to pursue and desire, which gives us, you know, hope that, hey, in the you know, David's great. He's got many years left in his life by the look of it. Some of us who are older, you know, God is actually, I think, you know, Joshua and Caleb were 80 when they went into the promised land. So, you know, so I think, you know, there's plenty left for us guys in what's coming, which is great. So, yeah.
Hey, Mike, I've got to be going, but are we going to do it again in 2 weeks? Does that work for you?
Yeah, should be okay, yeah.
Okay, so we'll just do the same time, same place, 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, that'll be fine, yeah.
Right, and you'll be posting this. I want to hear the rest of this. You'll be posting it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, or you can just send me a link. You want to keep it private. You're
Yeah.
good to post it on YouTube, right, Mike?
If I know how.
No. I mean, you're fine it going public on
Oh,
YouTube.
gotcha. Yes, right. Yeah. No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, as always,
There might
thank
be a
you.
few. There might be a few shocked faces seeing me on
Yeah.
there, but whatever.
Yeah, but again, what I want to say, Mike, is again, thank you so much for your time. Sorry I had to leave early today, but bless you, brother, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay?
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Okay.
You know,
Yep.
Mike and I, we were talking here a while back. Uh, the area where I live at one time had a severe drought, and so we just kind of moved into a realm of government. The Lord led our body into a realm of government, and we did away with the drought, and He said the waters would never recede again. And then in this year, they were saying, oh, we're going to have a drought, there's no snow or whatever. So Mike and I got together, and I said, yeah, this has been going around, but I feel like the Lord has encouraged me to move into this realm and lay hold of the snow. And so one of the passages he gave to me was the treasure of snow in Job, that he speaks to Job about. Do you know, have you seen the treasures of snow and different things like that? So I was literally given access to this treasure of snow, and it literally, the wind of the Lord went into this place and threw it out, and it wasn't even 2 or 3 days later, unpredicted snowfall fell in our area, and it has exceedingly done more and more since then. But what I love about that is that, again, one of the things that you've done is, for years, when I float in different countries or whatever, weather, all kinds of things, have always responded to me in the sense of what God was doing. But I think I never really knew what to do with it. It was just kind of like, I looked at it as a reaction or a response to a prophetic word or whatever. And I feel, again, what's happening is I'm more deliberate now, in the sense of getting the mind of the Lord and looking to gain access to things that was always there in the heavenly realm, but just never went there to, engage with that. So, that just delights me, because I think what you just mentioned about government, or, wanting to stay in the season that you're at, I find myself now accessing more and being able to do more. So, I'm like, well, I don't think I really want to go to this meeting, or I don't think, and so I'm adjusting. I've always kind of been that way, just because of my intimacy with the Lord. But now it's kind of taken it to a different level, and I'm having to adjust to, all what that really entails, at least for me, now in this time.
Sure, yeah. It's about administering the kingdom. When you think of it in practical terms, it sounds quite logical. There's a king, there's a kingdom, there's a rule, there's outworking it. We just didn't really see our part in it. And we know we're supposedly joint heirs with Christ, but actually doing it seems so separate. I was talking to David earlier about so many scriptures that are very real and very practical things. They've been so spiritualized that we've missed the reality of them. Come boldly to the throne of grace. Well, people just take that as, oh, I'll pray and God will hear my prayers, rather than, hey, no, come boldly to the throne of grace. We're seated with Christ in heavenly places. Well, yeah, we know that in theory, but actually, no, we're seated there. We have thrones. We're supposed to administer his kingdom jointly with him, because we're joint heirs with him. He has all the promises of God. It's that whole dimension, really.
Interacts with heaven. He goes and he talks to wisdom, and
which I think that's a a key really to seeing a lot of these things. Just realizing that there's so much more in practical reality. As you were saying, these are real places. We do real things there. We administer the kingdom. We just need to know what his will is to release it. And the closer we get, the more that becomes instinctive in us, that we flow it. I think, the 1 Corinthians 6:17, he is joined to the Lord, becomes one spirit. And I think that scripture just has a wealth of revelatory experience that people just have skirted over because they couldn't see how possibly that could work. But now I think the realms of government are being released, so that as we mature and we go beyond being stewards of the gifts and stewards of the ministries he's given us to becoming friends, which he reveals his heart and purposes to, that actually sees that we're called to cooperate with him and to function with him in it. It's, if I think back 20 years, it's just totally mind-blowing. It's no wonder that I couldn't contain my experiences then, because there was no frame of reference for that. But now, we are called to become lords, and there's lordship where we administer, obviously, the kingdom as lords, that we take the laws that he's brought in as king and we administer them on his behalf, which is just an awesome thing. And then actually, he's called us to a higher realm of being kings, and actually we're kings under his fatherhood, and we can operate in kingship, and then we get to do things in kingship which are creative and operate in creative light and creative power, which are just like, wow, and then sonship. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of sonship. I can begin to see what kings could do, but sons is in a whole different ball game that will answer the call of creation, so that we will be manifest to bring creation back into order, out of that relationship where we get access to stand in his presence in some of those places, which go beyond heaven into heaven of heavens and perfection. And it's a different realm there. I've only been there a few times, but it's a different realm. It's a different atmosphere. Even going into that galactic council, it was a different. It was different. I knew it was a different place. And that just comes out of growing and being willing to be transformed and transfigured and metamorphosed, whichever words you want to use, to become more like him, to be into his image, therefore entrusted with greater dimensions of authority, and seeing that the whole of heaven functions this way. It's like there are councils, there are courts. I mean, you can read. I mean, it's all in the Bible. You can see it if you look at it, but you just didn't look at it as something that was possible for us to be involved in. The angels, yes, okay, seemingly this, but actually no, we're called to be involved in those places, which isn't. I just love it. I just think, wow, God wants to entrust us with that level of authority and power, and we're just learning as we're willing to be matured and to grow and to become, what we really already are. It's almost like that's who we really are. We just need to become that, in a way. So it's an awesome thing to administer the kingdom. And anything that Jesus did, hey, we have a certain mandate that we can do it. We've got the law of first mention. If Jesus did it, law of precedent, we can do it. And then, hey, there's a whole load of things which aren't written that Jesus did that we also get access to as well as sons, which is even more amazing. So yeah, it's great. Really, really good.
Yeah. I for a few years now, I've been stirred to the Lord's been speaking to me about the difference between predicting the future and creating it.
Yeah.
So in a lot of my writings and different things like that, I've been, trying to, release that more and more. And I remember when I first started doing that, it was really a challenge for people, because the whole idea of creating something, which in my heart and mind was really about creating motion and causing something to move rather than just predicting the outcome of something. And so I see that whole thing shifting now. And when even when I would prophesy, to me, my scepter, for the most part, is my instrument. So like when I'm on the mountain of the Lord and I'm playing my instrument, that's my scepter. And it's like I'm able to use that and reach out and do certain things. But, and this is actually leading to a question. So as I've operated in different things like this for a few years, I was never really acquainted with, like, say, obtaining the scroll or different things as you have described, and I've heard Ian, speak about this as well, and have since been leaning into that. But I'm wondering, where is the, like, even though I didn't really have an understanding of that, I still saw I still saw creation responding to what was coming out of me, just that, sense of authority or whatever. And I'm just wondering, how is it that there is a measure of authority and power, that's released when you're just moving realms of knowledge, and you have this concept of how things are working in the spirit, but yet not actually getting hold of a scroll or, kind of a, just the things that you've described. And even though I'm beginning to experience that now, I have not previously. So I'm wondering, how do those two worlds, the difference between them as far as authority, the manifestation of it, am I making sense?
Yeah.
What, just
yeah. Well, I mean, that's the scroll of our destiny, if you like, is really contained in the light that our spirit is. I mean, in a sense, God uses pictures and uses symbols like scrolls and books and things to help us to connect with them in a physical sense. And so even, when you go into heaven and you see people or you see things, you're seeing them really in the form that your memory here enables you to perceive and understand. But actually, we're really balls of light. When Jesus appeared to Paul on the Emmaus Road to Saul, he was like a ball of light. And that's actually, our spirit is light, and contained within that light, there is a sequence, if you like, of frequency or DNA, if you want to call it that, which contains the record that we carried from eternity, and that is contained within a physical body, and it's contained within our heart, if you like. And so we've always been connected to it because it's really who we are. We just really didn't see the full dimension of it. So it's almost like it, even if you're not born again, sometimes people are drawn to things that it leaks out of their scroll, if you like, of really, they're drawn, even though they're not actually connected with God, they're still drawn to something which you would call maybe the desires of the heart that have come from that source. And we operate in that, even if we don't know it, we're still functioning in it, but we're functioning in it as children. And so in Galatians 4, where it talks about, we may be the heirs to the throne, but as children, we still have tutors, and we still have guardians, if you like, that help us. And so as children, we have just played and been ourselves, and some of that stuff has directed us according to the path that God has entailed us to have. But once we start to get mature, he then starts to actually say, now you can actually see how this functions. So yes, you have this scroll. All the days of your life were ordained on this scroll. You can see how that actually affects how you live your life on a daily basis. And in a sense, then you realize that everything functions in heaven on the basis of scrolls, of mandates, of orders, if you like. And so then we begin to then come into a revelation that we can operate with those scrolls, and actually when we're then given direction from God, we can go and take those scrolls. So for me now, I don't do anything unless I've got a scroll. And that's not my scroll in the sense of my destiny scroll, but actually it's a written court order from God that says you have authority to do this. Now I know I have authority that's in the Word of God to lay hands on the sick and see them recover and do all the things that the Word of God says, which I know that. But actually there are things that I'm called to do, like for instance you were called to go and access that place of the snow, and then to release that into this realm to change the climate of this realm. And so literally you had an authority, a mandate to do that, which is literally what a scroll is. It's just the mandated authority to do something. So what I see now is once I have that mandated authority, I then can access different courts in heaven to use that mandated authority to release other resources like angels. So when I get a scroll, I take it as a matter of course now into the court of angels, and they volunteer. Legions of them are lining up there waiting for someone to come and say, hey, get involved in this. And they line up, and so angelic assignments come along with that scroll, and I release them to do their bit. So quite often I was trying to do their bit. So I was trying to deal with things in the spiritual atmosphere that's their function. You know, like Daniel prayed, and you know, it took 3 weeks before the message came through because there was this battle in the spiritual realm, which Daniel may or may not have been aware of, but it was going on. Now, when you understand the sort of the releasing the angelic realm, they deal with that stuff because they have a mandate to do it when we give them the scroll and they get involved. Same with the cloud of witnesses, the men in white linen. They want to be involved in things that their mantles and their callings were associated with. And so you can take it into the court of the upright, and you can get wisdom and direction that comes from them because they've been there, done it, got the t-shirt, made the mistakes. I want to know what the mistakes are, you know, so I don't make them. And so I can get insight from those who've gone before. Hey, don't make the same mistake I did in this, because hey, I had all this in front of me and I messed up and I did this and I lost this. So there's a sense where we get to use those things in a whole different realm and ball game than we're used to, because we're now operating in a level of authority in the access of heaven that's to do with mandated kingdom authority that gives us access to resources and gives us access to things that we just didn't really realize before. You know, and that once we really understand how to use those things effectively, it will open up the everlasting doors. It will open the windows of heaven. We will start to see manifestations of the kingdom around those open doors. You know, call them cities of refuge, call them revival centers, but actual physical places on earth, as well as some spiritual dynamics that actually we're seeing the authority of the kingdom so manifesting that we live as ambassadors of heaven, and we're not subject to the laws of earth because we live from another kingdom, and we set up embassies, if you like, on earth of heaven, and we bring the laws of heaven through those mandates, through those scrolls, and we start to totally change. It's not just that we have access to snow. we have access to create perfect climate within our sphere. I mean, I think the dimensions are coming are going to just go way over what we are experiencing right now. But it's good stuff that we're learning.
Yeah.
You know, so I think scrolls really key thing to understand how to use them, and we're just learning. I think this is it. I'm just stumbling across some of this. Some of it, wisdom has given me some direction in it and shown me how to go to different courts and use those things. You know, and I'm gonna enjoy people doing that more and more, because I want to see people really start to function in their full levels of authority, because it's going to change things. Yeah, really change things.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed is I had an encounter a while back. I've had similar things to this over the years, but this one in particular, I was in a parking lot like this, and trees were planted in the media of the parking lot, and I was just worshiping the Lord in my vehicle, waiting for appointment and stuff, and all of a sudden the trees, it was like an open vision. They started clapping their limbs. Now, mind you, it's in winter, no leaves, right? But as they're clapping their limbs, I'm seeing the leaves, and they're full blown, and they're totally looking different or whatever. But in that moment, the Lord spoke to me, and He said, they are applauding your ability to see them in their true state. Creation is beginning to respond to, the ability of, my people to see things in their true form, in their heavenly state. So I find that as I tune into that more and more, I think that's another reason why literal creation, responds to different meetings, we're at, things that are going on, because it's like they know that you know.
Yeah.
And another thing that that you kind of encouraged in me was I had a recall encounter where I was when we worship, it's just spontaneous. We don't know what we're going to sing, where we're going. We just follow the leading of the Spirit, and we've done that for a number of years. So it opens up a lot of things in the spirit realms and so forth. But as we were doing this, the Lord began to sing to me through me. So He's singing to me, but through me. So the song that I'm singing is the Lord singing, releasing this sound. And He began to sing to me about our ministry's called Mountaintop International. Now, while we've had different scriptures that pertain to that, and I think this is a scroll moment, is why I'm bringing this up, is even though we've had understandings, I had understandings, okay, this is why we're Mountaintop International. Well, in this song, the Lord said, you see that mountain? He goes, that's the mountain you asked if you could have. And I said, yes, I gave you that mountain. And so in my song, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having a recall moment of the Lord giving me this mountain. And as soon as that experience happened, I appeared on the mountain, like in a real time. And for the first time, I'm looking out, and I'm seeing like the city of God, this New Jerusalem. I mean, this panoramic view of all the stuff going on. And I look off to my right, and David is standing on my mountain. And the song's coming, and people are coming up the mountain as the sound, and I realized it wasn't because of what I was singing. It was the Lord singing. He was singing to me, through me, and they were responding to what He was saying, and it created this thing. So I was just, thrilled by this recall moment of engagement. But now, for the first time after all these years, I'm like, oh my gosh, Mountaintop International is because you gave me that and so I thought, oh, that's in my recorded book, so that was very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's great, isn't it? I mean, when you see how God has led and directed, and we've been on a journey, and there have been loads of stepping stones and places along that journey that when you look back now and you just think, wow, yeah, that was part of the journey, and I learned something there. I just feel that, I mean, the last few years, I just think it's just opened up just a whole new vista, I think, to see some of those things that, yes, we've done, but some of them, it's almost like I mean, I've done so many things, but seemingly by accident. You know, I had no intention of doing something, but it just happened. And I look back and think they were no accidents. They were part of the journey that God had for me. You know, for me, it's like I've been to sort of, God has sort of taken me in to go to places. I've been to a couple of conferences that had nothing to do with anything that happened. You know, completely. You know, we do a lot of ministry to the poor. We do a lot of work with addictions here, and you know, and we work with the police and Christian police and different things. And so, you know, I've been to a couple of conferences which have been milestones in my journey, but God ambushed me. You know, it's almost like He took me out of my comfort zone of where I normally are to go and do something, and then He did something absolutely, completely different, which just, I look back and think, yeah, this is an amazing journey that God's had His hand on all the time, and He obviously sees the bigger picture, but now He's just enabling us to see some of the bigger picture as well, and it is such a joy and privilege and just a thrilling thing when you suddenly start to see, hey, that is my destiny. That is what God has brought me to this place and time for. And it's suddenly just like the fulfillment of my identity and knowing who I am in what I'm doing now, even in the last year, is just, it feels like I'm home. You know, it just feels like this is where you always should have been, and now you know it. And as you say, it's amazing, those type of things, that they just give you that glimpse into what God sees, and then when we see it, it's just like, wow, amazing. But awesome, you know, awesome, really. I love it. That's great.
Do you have time to shed any light? I don't know. I think I might have mentioned this via Facebook to you at one point, but my initiation into like the prophetic mantle and so forth years ago was preceded by an open vision of a cloaked one. He was like an ancient one. He didn't look at me in the face. I was actually in a coffee shop, and a guy I didn't even know came and met me because he wanted to meet me, and he says, "Look, I got this word for you," and he began to prophesy over me outside of this coffee shop. This is in the early 90s. So I go in and sit down in this coffee shop. They leave to use the restroom or whatever, and this cloaked ancient one appears in the coffee shop, and he has a staff, and he's just walking toward the exit. And I'm, imagine I'm just like, oh my gosh, is this real? And so I had 3 encounters with this ancient one, and the last encounter was I was driving down a highway, and he was crossing the road, and he said the scepter is in the high place. And mind you, I'm kind of very green about a lot of things, and then I saw an open vision of a scepter laying against a stone in the high place. It was a golden scepter. And then one of my encounters, though, I was in a prayer group, and when I looked, I had the opportunity to actually look at his face or into his eyes, and when I did, I screamed. I was in this group, and I go, oh my gosh, it's me. When I looked into his eyes, I saw myself. And so I'm just wondering, someone had brought up about these cloaked ones or whatever. I didn't even know that was like, I just thought that was my own personal experience or whatever, but I don't know if it was Ian or if it was somebody who said something about that, and it caught my attention. I was just curious if you've heard anything about the cloaked ones or what they are, who they are.
Well, my encounter with, I mean, you encounter angels, you can encounter the men in white linen and different things, and I've had encounters with all of those. I believe, I mean, we have our own guardian angels, if you like, those ministry angels who are with us in this dimension around us, and so they minister with us and they guard and protect us. But it also mentions, I think in Matthew, it talks about the angel that's our angel in heaven. And I believe what you're probably talking about is one of the Ben Elohim who were guardians of our mountain throne, that they caretaked it for us and were responsible for some of the direction that we had in our lives, that the things have opened doors, of maneuvered situations, have created relationships, because they've been on our throne waiting for us to come to that level of maturity. And I think there are some people who they engage with like the experiences you have, and when you look and you saw yourself, you're seeing, because they're there, they've been assigned to us, and when we get on our throne, they're still there to help us with the protocol. I didn't really realize that until I started taking people to thrones and helping people engage thrones. I spent some time looking around what mine was like, because generally I just get on with it and do stuff from it. I didn't really think too much about, well, what's around, what's behind it. I look down from it and see from this perspective into the realm of Earth through it. But I saw, hey, there's this big angel, cloaked angel, around the back, standing behind. And I went to talk to him, found out what he was called. And said, well, what are you here for? He's, well, I've always been here. I've been here waiting for you. And I'm here to help you with the protocol of heaven. So I would potentially, that could be, I know Ian talks about the Ben Elohim as being part of the first creation. That's why they're ancient ones. And they were there to prepare the creation for us to come. And obviously it got messed up. Some of those ones were the ones that were watcher angels who fell and became formed the Nephilim in Genesis 6. So they're the watchers. They're watching for us. They're there to equip and train and help us. And so I would imagine that's something of what you've experienced, and you've just been, because of your intimacy and because of the sense that you have developed a sensitivity to the spirit, that you've been able to see, and they've had more access to actively engage with you. Whereas for most people, most people aren't sensitive enough for that active engagement. And so it sounds pretty awesome things and they're still there. So when you go on your mountain, just have a look and engage there, because they're ongoingly looking to help us and to guide us as well. So sounds pretty cool.
That's great.
So yeah.
Wow.
Okie dokie. Okay. I mean, I've got to shoot off now.